Hello and welcome to another day on Cornwall Pocket Farm. My name is Jenny and today I'm going to be talking about my first stole make. So this project was an extra project. It sort of wasn't totally required for the weekend. But of course once I'd found that fake fur secondhand, I just could not only use a little tiny bit of it. There was all this lovely nice quality fur left over, and I thought a stole would be really nice, not only for the weekend but also ongoing, because for the weekend it was obviously the middle of winter, so it was going to be a bit chilly, and most of my outfits were sort of sleeveless or very thin, and New Zealand isn't known for heating the inside of its buildings, shall we say, so it's quite common to be really quite cold inside in New Zealand. So I thought it would be nice to have something just to put around my shoulders. And also I thought it would be really nice to have a stole going forward, because as you know, I go out dancing to dance parties, and also we go out in the evening, as you do, you know, to various events throughout the year. So what I wanted to do was actually make a fur stole in a 1940s style, so it would go with sort of my other clothes, if you like, and also it's just a look that I like. So that's what I decided to do. And of course there's a lot of flexibility in these things. You know, you see things sort of in the early 1920s is different than the late 1920s, and when you look at the 1930s, late 1930s is quite 1940s, and so there's a lot of sort of fluidity and flexibility across these sort of eras and looks. And of course this is New Zealand, so who's really counting? As long as it's not modern, I thought that would be great. So I was going for a particularly 1940s vibe with this stole, and I'm really pleased with the way it came out. I really like the colour of the lining. I added some little feathers to it, and I was really pleased with the outcome. So I didn't actually use a pattern for this stole. I actually just draped it because it was a last minute project. I didn't have a pattern or any resources for it, so I just use a little bit of scrap, it's curtain lining that I use for my mock-ups. I just used a little bit of scrap curtain lining and sort of draped it around on my mannequin Audrey, who sits just here, and once I'd got it draped on Audrey and got a sort of bit of an idea and a plan, and then of course I put it on myself to work out the fit for my body. Now I cut out the faux fur for the stole at the same time as I cut out the fur for the collar, the video that you've already seen last week. I'll put a link to it if you haven't seen it. And it was easier to do that because I only had that limited resource, the secondhand fur that I'd found. So I needed to get all the pattern pieces to fit on that, and I did it just with tiny tolerances. So I cut it all out at the same time as the collar, and then obviously made the collar first because that was a priority, and you've seen that already, and then moved on to the stole. Hopefully it all makes sense because I was working on multiple projects at the same time. I've tried to make discrete stories for each item of clothing, and hopefully that's sort of working. But suffice to say, I was making everything all at the same time, so it did get just a little bit chaotic in my very tiny sewing room. I wore it with the flapper dress, and I also wore it with the velvet monstrosity. I should really come up with another name for that, shouldn't I? But the velvet monstrosity sort of evolved as I was making it, and that's what it is called. Of course I did wear that for the event, and it didn't look monstrous when I finished it, but of course that's going to be in a couple of videos time, so if you want to see how the velvet monstrosity turned out, you'll have to subscribe, click the bells, buttons, comment, all that, and then follow along, and you can see the velvet monstrosity in about 2 videos time, I think, because I think next week I'm going to do the 1 hour dress to go with my poire look. I was really pleased with that, and I did end up entering the fashion flaunt after all, so that was great fun. And then the week after that I'll be doing the velvet monstrosity transformation, shall we say. Anyway, let's get on with this video, the making of the stole, and I hope you enjoy it. I use these old bits of fabric and just sort of try and figure out what I can on this stole. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm trying anyway. So what I'm sort of thinking with the stole is, could I do something that sort of almost comes around like that, and then have another piece that sort of fills in that piece, so it sort of has the shoulder is made from that. So essentially I have a flat long bit that comes all the way around, and then I have almost like an oval piece with a hole in it. I don't know if that makes sense or it's a proper thing, but that sort of seems stole-like to me. And if I bring it so it comes down at the front, then it will come out at the sides, won't it? Should do. Should be flat at the back and then come down at the sides, and I could maybe cut it up. I'm going to pin this on and see how I go from there, because then I think this piece up here would be, yeah. I'll get on with this idea, and I'll bring you back when I've got somewhere, I think. Because this, of course, is not a tutorial. Nothing that I ever do is a tutorial, because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm making it up as I go along. Obviously, I've got a bunch of knowledge from doing various things in the past, but of course, every time I do something on this channel, it's the first time I'm doing it generally. So it's all a bit of an experiment, and I enjoy the creative process of doing something new every time. Come on, Audrey, over here so you can see a bit better. Hopefully you can see that a bit better. So I've sort of got a yoke piece coming around, and then this bit at the bottom is essentially just wrapped around, but then sort of brought down into a V, which makes the side pieces come out, and then I just sort of chopped it in the centre. Now it's very, very rough, very, very rough. What I'm going to do now is pin these two bits together and try it on actually me, because Audrey has wider shoulders than I do. But I'm going to pin it together and then just try it on and see if it's the sort of thing. And then, of course, I shall just take these mock-up pieces and put it on the fur to see if I've got enough fabric. Because I haven't got enough fabric, then it's all academic, really, isn't it? Yeah. So, yeah, that's what I'm doing next. I'm going to try it on. So, it turns out that Audrey might have wider shoulders, but, of course, I forgot she doesn't have any arms. So once I've got my arms in there, it's a little bit too small. But as a concept, I quite like this sort of almost quite architectural shoulder detail on it. And it would certainly, I mean, obviously this dress is not ideal to put it over because this cotton is not sliding, and this is, it's all rough, so it's basically sticking, and I can't move it around very easily. But I think as a concept, that's the sort of thing that I would like. So, I'm going to try it on my fur fabric and see if I've got vaguely enough. If I've got vaguely enough, it's worth taking it to a sort of another stage and trying to get it a little bit more sophisticated and actually accommodate arms, which of course is going to be a fairly big deal because I'll need those. So, but let's just check it on the fabric first, because if I haven't got enough, then I can just stop and move on with the next project. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so I've got my fabric out here, and of course I'd forgotten about the pile, and the pile needs to come down that way. So what I actually have is a taller piece of fabric, if you like, than a wider piece of fabric, which is what I first thought. So what I might need to do is do it in sort of pieces. I could do a seam down the back, but that does give me the opportunity to maybe do it so that the fur is not straight down, so that I've got sort of like almost like contrasting piles, which might make more of the fabric. I don't want one upside down and one the right way round, but I can either do them exactly the same and join them, and then you wouldn't be able to see the seam because of the fur, or I can do it on a slight angle, and then that would make quite a nice look. So I could try that. Let me just show you how much fabric I've got so you can see it. Okay, so this is how much fabric I've got on the table. Now this was the piece that went around, and you can see clearly it's too long. However, if I did it in halves and did a seam down the back, there would definitely be enough. I could also do it slightly on the angle if I needed to. There is a bit more fabric up here, you see. So I could sort of do it do it on the angle like that and then take another piece on a different angle. But I'd need 2 pieces like this, and then I need 1 piece sort of like this, which actually could be what I get out of that. Yeah, I might pile coming this way. So which way would I need to pile on the back? Sort of again, it feels like maybe I need a seam, but I don't want to be dealing with all that drama. Anyway, those are the 2 bits I need, and I also need to get out these collar pieces. Now these collar pieces again should come with the pile. So they are going to be, and they need to be 1 piece, I think, joined at the back neck. So I'm going to need, how much have I got? It's going to be tight, but I think I'm going to play around with it until I can find out how to get all these bits on. And I think it's worth, once I've done that, actually working this out a bit better. Okay, so what I'm going to do is another one in the calico to accommodate my arms. And I think if I'm really clever, I might have enough fur to do it. I'm going to have to play around with it for quite some time and then come back to you when I have an actual plan. But I'm hopeful at this point. The next thing I'm doing is just basically drawing around it and trying to make a bit of a pattern for half of the main part of the stole, because I sort of want to cut it out of fresh fabric and try it again, because I don't want to waste the fur, essentially. I've only got that little bit. And the other thing is that the yoke bit needs sorting out to make sure it fits really nicely on top of the new pattern. So I'm going to do it in fabric, but I'm first of all going to make a pattern. So I've marked all of the pieces out in chalk on the back of my faux fur. So the next thing to do is to find a really sharp scalpel blade, and then I just need to basically cut through the backing of the fabric but not affecting the fur on the other side. That's what I've seen on YouTube anyway, so let's hope it works. I've never done faux fur before, but it's the first time for everything, isn't it? I've double checked and triple checked that everything is the right way up based on this nap. Oh yeah, now I have a hole. Looks like this could take some time. I've made a little hole, but anyway, I will get back to you when I've got all these pieces cut out, well, scalpeled out. Got 2 neck bits, and then the bit that goes around in 2 pieces, which will need seaming. But the big question now is what lining. I have found this red silk in my stash that's left over from a previous project. I have some bright red lining fabric, but I'm thinking red's just a bit, I know I have a red fascinator thing, don't I? So would that be of any use? I'm just thinking that the red's just going to be a bit too much, a little bit unsophisticated. I have a little bit of this grey fabric. It's quite dull. I'm not leaning with that. I've got these 2 fabrics. I'm actually leaning with the blue. It's sort of just like, it's got a nice sheen to it. It's sort of subtle but a different colour. This one is nice, but it's more of a business suiting sort of stripe. I don't know, that's the vibe I'm going for. I don't think it is. And then this is the cotton that I was using for the collar, so I'm not going to use that. So I'm really leaning with the husband's. It's subtle, but it has a sheen, but I think it looks understated but elegant, which is what I'd like to go for. So I think I'm going to go with that. I now need to cut out the lining fabric, and then I think what I might do is whip up the lining fabric first, stitch all that, and then at least then I have those 2 bits, and then I can do that fiddly bit of trying to get the lining onto the fur, or even just sort of sew the fur. But I might leave that a little bit rather than doing it tonight, because I've been sewing all day, getting a bit tired now. Now of course for the lining I'm actually going to cut these on the fold because there's really no point in cutting them separately. I only did it like that because of the amount of fabric that I have, but I have enough lining material that I can just cut these on the fold, which will make it a lot easier. I must remember just to take off, oh, should I take off that extra, it's only 5mm. I won't take it off. No, topic sentence. Seam allowance. Of course I've got seam allowance on these pieces so the fur will be a little bit smaller, but I don't think I will take it off the lining because I think it's nicer to have a bit more room in the lining. The lining is not stretchy, but there is stretch in the stole, so I'm actually going to keep the seam allowance on even though I'm going to cut them on the fold. Yes. So I've done the easy bit. I have stitched together the lining. There was only the one seam because of course I did it in on the fold, so there weren't extra seams. Right, so that's done and ready to go. Now I need to, yes, grapple with the fur. So first of all I'm going to do the centre seam on the shawl part that comes around my shoulders. And then I'll just do the, I haven't pinned it yet, but I'm just going to do then the little seam that that joins the neck piece, and then essentially I'll have two pieces together like that. The next thing I will need to do then, of course, is sew this curved tricky bit to this curved tricky bit. It was relatively straightforward on the lining fabric, but that's lining fabric. This is thick fur, so how that's going to go I don't know, but wish me luck. Well, good morning. It's another day now, and I stopped last night just when I pinned the neck piece to the sort of stole round the outside piece ready for stitching, and I'm actually really pleased that I stopped there because one of the things that I wanted to add in was that feather trim that I got from the bric-a-brac, and of course I hadn't done it, and if I'd stitched round I would have had to have unpicked it, so it was really good that I stopped at that point. I also thought last night about how I'm going to turn it the right way in. And I'm actually wondering whether I undo this seam down the back of the lining, because I will need to turn it through because I'm going to bag it out and then turn it around. I could potentially do it through the neck because I'm thinking of adding a collar, but I think it might be easier through the back seam, and also you really won't see that back seam, whereas on the neck probably there's a bit more wear there. So I need to give that a thought and just unpick where I'm going to do that. Might do it on the neck though because I haven't stitched that bit on yet. Anyway, the first thing is I need to get the feathers out and put the feathers on this and mock it up because it might not work, but I would like to put the feathers on. I think that would be rather special. This is the feather trim, if you remember, and I think I've got a reasonable amount on it. And the other reason I thought I'd put it on the stole is really I can't imagine that I'll ever wash this stole, really. I mean, it's not something you would, takes a lot of wear. So obviously these are real feathers, and so whatever I put this on can't get washed. So I think I'll put it on the stole because I can't really think of another purpose for it. I couldn't put it on one of the dresses, I don't think. Partly because it's a bit stiff, and again partly because it's real feathers and I don't think it would be washable. Right, yes, I'm going to try it and see what it looks. Mock it up and see how it looks. Okay, well I've just tried pinning it in the seam and it doesn't really work because it sticks out, which is not, because I can't get this seam to sort of sit flat like that, which would need to happen to make it point down. And I think sticking out that, it just looks really silly. So the other option would just be to sort of tack it on the outside after I've made it, or maybe put it further down on the stole. But certainly it doesn't work in this seam. So I've only pinned it into this little bit here, so I can take it out, no harm done, and just stitch it as I was going to do. And then see if I can put these feathers somewhere else, because I think they're rather nice, but not here. Clearly, because I look a little bit like a deranged bird. So the first thing I have to do, of course, is change this needle, because I've got the very fine silk needle in here that I was using for my 1 hour dress. I'm just going to put it back in the same place because I will need it for later and I know where it is. I'm going to go back to the ballpoint needle, and I might use the heavy duty ballpoint needle, which I think will be the best thing to do for this faux fur. Yeah, so I'm back to dealing with the fiddly fur. Hopefully. Please don't let it be too horrid. Okay, well, I have just done that main stitch around and I'm really quite pleased with the way it's looking. It's quite 1940s, I think. That having that yoke in there has made quite a nice shoulder, and I do like a 1940s look, so I think that's really quite nice. Certainly the look, very nice. So I do have to do a lining on here, and I'm toying with doing a little stand collar. Not sure at the moment. Not quite sure what I can do with these feathers either. I would like to use them, but I'm just not sure how yet. Maybe it's something I just add on afterwards. I have to play with it and see what I think. But maybe I just keep it simple. I don't know. And I'm hoping to put a little hook and eye there just to hold it closed. But really with that, having that yoke on it means that it stays on my shoulders because it's got a nice shape to it. It's not going to slide off. A lot of those just simple wrap ones, I just thought I'd be fighting with it all evening trying to sort of keep it on. And if it's a little chillier when we arrive in the venue, I'd like to keep it on in the venue. So yeah, pleased with that. Okay, I've just actually tacked it to the bottom. I've just pinned it on to the bottom of the stole. I think that's quite nice. It adds a little bit of interesting touch. What I could do is do the lining and then actually just sort of hand stitch, tack this in at the bottom, so that if I wanted to take it off at any point to wash the stole, I could, but it would just be easy just to tack it on and then have that little extra glam, I think. I did think about putting a little bit around the collar as well, but I think it's a little bit too sort of jungle queen. So I know I should be storming on with something else, but I really want to put a collar on this. I really like the stole, I'm very pleased with it. So I've just sort of mocked up a little thing on the neck, and I think it's really rather lovely. So I am going to make, or I'm going to try and make a collar to go with the stole. So quick, can I draft something really quickly? I've worked out that it is 16 to 1, so I only need to do a half piece probably. So if I do, it's 16 across there. I want it about that tall at the back, which is about, let's say 4 at the back, about 8 at the front. Okay, I've just mocked it up in a bit of paper. This came out a bit pointy, but I think it's better just sat up like that. Yeah. It's rough and ready, this. I'm going to try it and see if I can make it to work. I want to have it on fur on both sides. It'll be cuddly around my neck, I think. Okay, wish me luck. I'm going in with the furry monster. This could be unpleasant, but hey. Let's just start, hey? That's the plan. Okay, moment of truth. Well, here we go. Try and get this through this little hole I've left. Hopefully it's going to work and be nice. Pleased I went with this grey lining. I think it's nice. It's sharp. Let's try and get the little pointy bits out. Right, well, lined. How's it looking? Is it good? Let's have a look in the mirror. Not at all bad, quite pleased with that. Now, I might have to tack down some of these edges, these front edges, just because they tend to roll out, like on here as well. I might just put a few tacks and tack it around the neck. I do need to stitch up that hole. Now, I made the collar and then decided it was way too thick to get through the machine with this, and all of the drama of getting this through the machine, I thought, no, it's going to be a horrible mess, it's just not going to work. So I stitched around the collar and then left this piece open, this bit open, because I was going to put it inside. But what I've decided to do is actually just hand tack it, if I can get it to work. If I can't get it to work, I'll just leave it off. But if I can get it to work, I could just hand tack it to the inside of that collar. And there's so much fur, I don't think you'd really notice if there were some really quite ugly stitches in there, really. But I think that's going to be the easiest way to get that on, is just to hand stitch it, because there's no way it's going through the machine. I'm just going to pin the neck on, see what it looks like, and see if I'm going to go with it or not. And then I'll put it on the hand sewing pile, of which there is masses. Will I have time to do this hand sewing? I don't know. Well, I think I like it with the collar on. Clearly, I will have to make sure it's even, because it's a bit wonky at the front at the moment. But I think I quite like the collar. It makes it very sort of snuggly. And yeah, it just adds a little warmth around the neck. I think that's rather nice. And I think it adds to the 40s vibe, which I like. But I will have to make sure it's even, and I think I'll just hand stitch it on. It's on the hand stitching pile, I think. Okay, so I've had a bit of a tidy up, and I thought we should... fluff. Fluff's everywhere in this room. I think we should have a little go at this board, because a few things have changed and I just need to keep updated. So, the 1 hour dressmaker is sort of made, but needs hand sewing. So I think I need a sort of some sort of indication of done but hand sewing. So I think I'm going to cross it through, because I think that's like, I've done that. But I think it's going to need a star for hand sewing. The velvet dress, we haven't even started that, that's next. First stole make, again, I think I have made that, but we have a hand sewing bit here. Let's just make this cleaner, shall we? Let's just, there we go. We'll put the star there, meaning we need hand sewing. Right, fur collar make, that again done, a little bit of hand sewing. So I think we've got hand sewing there. I've just got a few minutes in my sewing room this morning and I'm trying to do finishing off. So this stole is complete and I have the feather trim on it now and I'm really pleased. The thing I need to do now is just get hook and eye on the closure. I think we're making fabulous progress. I have another day or two, but not whole days like the weekend. I've just got bits of time here and there. Okay, success. The hand sewing on the stole and also on the collar is finished. So all fur has left my sewing room. Yay! So I can take them off the board completely. It is so nice to have something properly, fully complete. So, fur stole, let's take that star off. Fur collar, star off. I think we need a tick for that, so ticks for totally completed. Yay! Still lots to do though. Better crack on, eh?